Okay, so the very first thing we need to do before we can build this entire system out is buy a domain name. There are also a couple of other things I want to quickly discuss so that you ultimately can pick the right domain name for you and in your career. However, this is going to be pretty straightforward. There's not a lot to really cover here, so just hang tight. I just wanted to make sure that I covered every single step of this process so that there really was no guesswork. The first thing we need to talk about is where you're going to ultimately buy your domain name. A lot of people would advise you to buy your domains through one site and host everything through a different site. If you're not familiar with how this all works, a domain name is basically just like an address. It points wherever you tell it to point in terms of files. It points to whatever files you tell it to point to. Your hosting is like one big file cabinet. It stores all of those files that ultimately make up your website, and so they can be separated. And you could buy your domain through one site, host everything somewhere else, and then just tell that domain where to point. The issue there is that it's a little more complicated. It makes my brain hurt, so I don't do it that way. Again, many would advise you to do it. There are certain security advantages through separating things, and if you ever wanted to move hosts, it becomes easier to do that. But again, I'm a bit technically challenged. I've got a head for marketing, but not for the technical side of website construction and all these things. So I like to keep things simple, and for years now I've been just buying everything in one place. It's a lot easier. A couple clicks of a button and I've got a new domain. And you might find as you get into this that you want to create different domains for different reasons. In fact, I can guarantee you probably will. So I'm going to just show you what I do. Again, if you want to take one of those more complex routes, then go for it. But I'm gonna just buy everything in one place. That's what I've been doing for years, and it's never presented any problems for me. So the next question is, what company do you want to use? There are many companies out there. I'd recommend that you stick with a reputable company. I use a company called DreamHost, and if you're interested in checking them out, I put together a little deal for you, a little discount code, and you can get all that in the resources that you should see below this video. That'll save you 10% on hosting. And again, I'm not trying to push DreamHost at all. They've got their pros and cons, just like any service. Other reputable services are sites like GoDaddy, HostGator, Bluehost. The only real plus in this situation with going with something like DreamHost is that it'll line up with my tutorials because they're the company that I use. They use a slightly different control panel than some of the other sites out there. Most sites use something called cPanel. DreamHost has its own control panel. So it'll look a little different. It functions basically the same. But if you're like me and you're a bit technically challenged, you just want everything to be simple, all things being pretty equal, I think DreamHost is a fine option. And again, that link in the resources and the discount code you should see there will take you to a discount for DreamHost if it's something you want to do. And I believe, it's been a while since I set things up, but I believe they're still offering a domain name when you get hosting, so you can get everything all at once. But I'm going to walk you through the process nonetheless. The first thing we want to do, assuming you did go with DreamHost, and obviously your own a different company would have its own process that should be relatively simple, as we just log in. I've got a notoriously slow internet here in New Zealand where I am currently recording this, so bear with me. I'm just chit-chatting here so that you don't have to stare at a blank screen for 5 minutes while the damn web page loads. Come on, wow. I'm in the absolute middle of nowhere. There we go. And internet is terribly slow. It's slow throughout the country, but where I am staying right now is the absolute middle of nowhere, and it's very slow. So when you log in, it takes you right to the registration page. If you couldn't find it, you come over here to domains, click on registration, and then you should see this field here. Now, the only real thing we need to discuss, well, there are two main things that I think you should consider when it comes to picking a domain. One is memorability. Primarily, we're talking about the ease of which you can advertise that domain name. So in other words, if you put a poster up or set it into a microphone from a stage, how hard would it be for those people to remember that and then just go and type things in? And for example, you wouldn't want something too complicated, or in my case, my name is terribly difficult to spell. It's Oszajca, so that would be a bad one to shout out from the stage. However, fortunately, I've done enough that if you type it in wrong in Google, it will help you out. And I am actually going to go with a domain name with my name in it for some other reasons, which we'll discuss here in a second. But if you can come up with something that is easy to remember, that you can put in an ad, say on the radio, and people will remember it, then that is going to be all the more powerful. It would actually be somewhat detrimental if I was to go on the radio and say go to johnojaca.com to a bunch of people who never heard of me. They'd forget it instantly. For that, I've got another URL already set up that's johnomusic.net. Unfortunately, the .com wasn't available. And wherever you can, I would go with the .com. I did a .net in that instance because I couldn't think of anything better at the time that was simple and easy to remember. But people will forget the .net and they'll type in .com, so try to get a .com. I strongly recommend it if you plan on doing any kind of advertising or offline advertising or promotion. However, if you're just going to do online stuff, then it doesn't really matter because people will almost always be clicking on that link. So in addition to that, which is something that is simple and memorable, the next thing we want to talk about is search engine optimization, SEO. I used to focus on this a lot more in terms of the squeeze page. That's what we're initially going to be doing, is setting up the squeeze page. Although the template I'm going to give you is a fully functioning website template. So if you don't have an existing website, then you can completely use what I'm going to give you to set up everything that you're going to need. If you've got an existing website, what I'm going to recommend you do is keep that. Don't make any changes until you get this up and profitable. And we're going to use this as a secondary site. But when it comes to ranking, and we'll talk a lot more about search engine optimization later in this course, but when it comes to search engine optimization, it's pretty important that you have your primary keyword in your domain name. And for most of us, that's going to be our artist name. So if your name is Joe Blow, you want to have joeblow.com. If you can't get that, then joeblowmusic.com. And so forth. I would really recommend that primary keyword that you ultimately want to rank for, which again is usually your artist name, should be the first thing in that domain name. If you can't get it, then tack something, preferably something short, after the domain name. So while this makes no logical sense, you wouldn't call it music johnojaca.com. It would have to be johnojacamusic.com. Obviously that combination there doesn't make any sense, putting music first, but you might come up with some ideas that do make sense to put words in front of your name. Don't do that. Put your name first and your whatever additional keyword you need to add second. For example, if it was I can't think of a fictitious band name, so we'll just say Guns N' Roses theband.com. That would be okay, but the band gunsnroses.com would not, for at least from a search engine optimization perspective. Both can do fine. It's just you're going to have an easier time of it if your keyword is it makes up the first part of your domain. And then, the only other thing is just to make sure that your artist name is in the keyword. Many people might have some sort of a nickname, or maybe they'll build a website around an album title or something like that. That you don't want to do that if you're hoping that people are going to see you live or hear about you and go to the internet and type in your artist name. You want them to be able to find you, so don't get too clever. It's going to be easier to rank in the search engines if you've got a keyword targeted domain. And once more, your artist name is, for most purposes, that keyword. There are instances where you could build a site around a genre or some other related keyword. For example, folkmusic.com, which would certainly be taken, but something along those lines. Let's say you just were trying to rank for a keyword like that. We're going to discuss ways that you can do that, go after some keywords, but I think it's a good idea to build, for this initial site, you want to build your artist brand. You want to build that brand up and that presence and that image and create a hub, an authority hub for you as the artist. So that's a really complicated, long-winded way of saying just go and buy your darn name as a .com. So for me, that would be johnojaca.com if I didn't have a website. I've already got one, which is at johnojaka.com. And so I'm going to go with johnojakamusic.com. And so many people ask, well, I've already got this big website, and I know I mentioned this a moment ago, but this comes up a lot. I get emails almost every day on this. I've already got a website. Should I install what you're giving me on that existing website? I'm going to ask you not to. I'm going to ask you to go and pick up a new domain and go through this process again. Build a second web property. It'll be easier. It's about $10 a year for the average domain. Hosting costs a bit more, but if you've already got a site, you should already have hosting. Can you install the site I'm going to give you on something like a Bandzoogle or a Host Baby site? No, you can't do that. You need to buy your own domain and install it. It requires, those are site builder platforms, and the functionality is somewhat predetermined and defined to fit their platform. We're going to be installing a WordPress site, and you need to create your own databases and all these kinds of things that are very easy to do, but you wouldn't be able to do it with an existing site builder platform. So go and, again, invest that $10, buy a domain, and build a new site from scratch. And this way you're not completely jumping ship on whatever you've been doing thus far, and you can really measure results and see how things are working. And perhaps down the line you want to jump ship on that old site, but I want to sort of build this site in a bubble. And there are often places, the site that I'm going to be teaching you to build is all about function and results, so it is very simple. Very few bells and whistles. It is intentionally so. It is not meant to have any elements that are distracting from the ultimate functionality. It is all about conversions, and sometimes we want that fancy site that really impresses our existing fans. So often I'll use a site like the one I'm going to show you how to build to get our new fans, but then once we have them as fans, once they're on our list, I'll send them to another site, a fancier site, where which I'll use as my platform to build the relationship. So again, if you've already got an existing site, there might be room for both of these sites, this new one and your existing one, within your funnel. So we'll talk about that more as it comes up. Really, that's when we're going to get into the content that we're going to be sending your list to build that bond, get them more familiar with you. You can use either platform, whatever you're comfortable with, but if you don't have a website, then what I'm going to be giving you is going to completely take care of the job. You won't need anything else. So very straightforward here. Once I've done that, I check availability, and we wait once more while the internet takes its time. Okay, and congratulations, it's available. I just enter my billing information and use Dream host name servers, use another host name servers, stick with the default. You click continue. Let me just make sure everything is working there. May blur a few things out for privacy's sake, although there's nothing too crucial. I might be lazy about it and just leave it. We click continue. You can register for 3 years, 2 years, just go with 1 year. Used to be that people felt for search engine optimization purposes registering for a longer period of time was important. I don't feel that to be the case any longer. And I'm going to pause the video while I enter my credit card information, so hang tight. Okay, and then we just come here and click charge this card now. Alright, and there we go, success. We've added John Ojaka Music to our registration queue. And that is all we need to do as far as buying a domain name. So we've got many more steps to go before our site is live, but I'm going to use this as an opportunity to sign off for this video.